Yes, ma'am. No worries at all.
Perfect. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the AcceptU Admission Specialist series of webinars that we run. All our monthly webinars are completely free of cost. And every month we try and encourage you to learn a little more about what goes into application. My name is Priyanka Bhartia. I'm the Managing Director Operations to the company called AcceptU. I don't want to give you the whole spiel of AcceptU because that's already right in front of you. But yes, what is unique about us is that every single counselor has been an admissions officer. Obviously, your chances of thus getting into your dream school, whatever that might be, big, small, liberal art, public, is always a little higher, a lot higher with AcceptU. Admission Specialist is a nonprofit that I work with where we try and run these webinars to help children of every single background have resources that they deserve. Some people can afford for an external counseling, some can't, and that's fine. That doesn't mean you don't deserve to go into your top college. So with that, we're going to obviously move to the heroes of today's session, Ananya and Sanya. Let me go alphabetically. Ananya. Ananya is that girl who would call me every single week when she probably needed to speak with me, probably once in 3 months. She has lots of ideas. She is very, very particular about her profile and extremely determined to achieve it. But what makes her really special is the fact that she listens to what I had to say. Clearly, obviously, she is going to Carnegie Mellon, and that for computer science. Sanya, soft-spoken, incredibly dedicated, very passionate about business, has so many little aspects that only she knew how to bring depth in. Sanya and I have had some of the most interesting conversations, and I feel there's so much that I've learned through Sanya in this little journey of 2 years that we've had. Sanya did another very tough major, business. Both these women have been able to accommodate the toughest majors and get into their toughest programs. Ananya, along with Carnegie, got into Duke. She got into, I forget the names. She got into a lot of UIUC, U of T, all very, very high level computer programs. Sanya, on the other hand, business schools are so tough to get in. And she got into the Kelly, she got into the UMich Flint School, she got into Parsons, and she's one of the few things which I will let Sanya talk about is the change in her major's path that she took. So you have Ananya, headstrong, clear, it's computer or nothing. And then there was Sanya who said, I'm not sure, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, to come to where she is today. With no more ado on this, please, a round of silent applause for Sanya and Ananya here. Everybody, please stay on mute. Let's start with our first question. Sanya, let's start with you. One of the key things that we always ask our children in this open-ended question and answer is, what do you think made you unique? Why do you think you were so successful to get into some of the top and tough business programs? Your 3 top features for you.
I would start with saying essays because I think essays are a really good opportunity to tell your side of the story. So you have your application, you can show your grades, you can show your GPA, you can show your extracurriculars, but there's a whole nother side to you because here's the thing, colleges are trying to admit a person, not just a GPA. So when you really have the chance to show the colleges what kind of person you are, and a different side to you that's not revealed with your GPA or your extracurriculars, the essays is where you kind of get to set yourself apart. So I think
Sanya, sorry. Children, please mute yourselves. Yeah, go ahead, Sanya.
Yeah, so I think essays were like a crucial part for me where I really got to express myself and reveal a few other interesting aspects about myself. And I personally think that's why I got into Parsons too. The second thing I would say is extracurriculars. They are great because some of the things I like most about myself and some of the things I'm most passionate about come through extracurriculars. And that's a way for you to show the colleges that, you're ready for the real world. You're ready to maybe you could have internships and stuff you did, and you can show them that I've had work experience. So, I have a clear head about what I'm trying to do, maybe the major you're trying to choose. You could have that organizations and you could have all different interests. Like personally, I really like songwriting, and that's a cool aspect to somebody who's a business major. That's like something different, something the colleges wouldn't expect out of you. So it's a way for you to like wow these colleges, which is something else I focused on. And the third part I would say is all of us probably have a story to tell. There's something in your life, maybe it could be related to academics. For me personally, it was a great shift in academics. So I got to tell my story to the colleges, which helped them understand my application better, and it helped them understand who I am better. So I think those three things combined really put me forward as my best self, and I could present to the colleges.
Ananya?
Yeah, so I think Sonia covered quite a few aspects, but something that I think I did really uniquely was I didn't try to overshoot like my capability. So a lot of the projects I made, they solved problems that were around me. So I kind of saw things in my life that were happening, people that I knew personally who had some issue in their life. And I knew that, like, especially as someone who is very dedicated to be a CS major, I know coding is a skill that can help solve a lot of different kinds of problems. So instead of trying to be really ambitious and like trying to be like, oh, I'll cure cancer and that like definitely get me to Stanford or whatever, I decided to see people who were struggling in my life or who I knew. Supposing I could see that my household help, she was having difficulty raising her son in terms of like giving him career choices. So I decided to address those kind of problems. And the good thing with doing this is like it ensures that your application is not cloned, because your life is not going to be the same as any other student. So the problems you see are not going to be the same as anyone else. And then you also let your personal voice shine, because it is your own story, it is people, it is your relationships that you're trying to build, and you're trying to, it shows the colleges that like after you graduate from after those 4 years from them, you'll use the skills that they teach you, those 4 years of education, to actually help the world. You're not going to end up becoming some sort of clone who just like wants a job. You're going to use make the most of that degree, and that's what they would really like. And I think that's a really attractive quality in any kind of applicant. Secondly, for me, as since I was a girl in STEM, STEM majors sort of have this stereotype of being extremely geeky, nerdy, and academic, one side, like one dimensional. So I tried really hard to show my left and right brains by showing creativity while also showing like the academic side, and like showing my STEM skills, technical skills, but also focusing on skills like art and dance, which kind of bring out creativity. Because at the end of the day, when you use both of them together, you're going to be able to have the best results. So I tried to focus on both of them as much as possible. And I think I tried to stay committed to the same projects for a really long time. So I think about ninth and 10th grade, I sort of settled on the projects that I wanted, and I continued them till 11th. I tried not to start anything new, focus on them for as long as you can. And that helps you bring depth, and it also it's more convincing because it seems like you genuinely care about what you're doing. You're not just hopping around, and you don't just seem confused and like you're just trying your luck with a bunch of things and seeing what works. You're actively trying to make everything you're doing work, and that kind of effort really goes a long way, I think.
You know, Ananya, my favorite word, and you know that, is depth. And I'm going to just pick up that word and actually ask you all to explain and illustrate it through your own activities. Sanya, starting with you, let's talk about the things that you managed to bring depth. And I know, you know, your songwriting was a very big part of it, but to choose those 3 or 4 things that you want to talk about and how you brought depth into it. That's very, very important for children, especially children who are in grade 9 and 10, because they actually have those solid years to be able to do it. Go ahead, Sanya.
Yeah, so as for depth, I would say that first of all, just choose something you genuinely want to do and you're passionate about, and make sure you're not just doing something to impress colleges. Because in order to obtain depth in your activities, you genuinely need to put in effort, and you're not going to be able to put in effort if you don't really like what you're doing. So when you're passionate about it, it just becomes that much easier. For example, I was super passionate about songwriting, and I continued that from ninth grade to 12th. And I wrote a bunch of songs, and that helped me so much around writing my essays, my communication skills. It helped me grow as a person as well. So I bought in depth by like really focusing on things I was passionate about. I've always been passionate about business, for example. So I got in depth by helping, taking care of some of my friends, and we started this organization that would help street vendors. And we took a lot of time trying to meet street vendors, talk to them. We spent 1 year just analyzing their problems and we went from there on. The second year, we would just go more in depth. We would help them. We opened a bank account in order to fund some money for them, buy them equipment, teach them about sanitization. So it takes time to build really big projects. And in terms of depth, I would say do something you're passionate about and really work on it. There are probably a lot of ideas you have. And as long as if you're passionate about it and you keep working on it, you can really stretch them out and make it into something big.
Agreed. And when it came to the street vendor, how did you go about choosing it, Sanya? What made you do that project?
Well, me and my friends were like kind of passing by a few street vendors, and I remember doing a crowdfunding campaign where I found out about how some people didn't even like have food, and it just struck to us that a lot of these street vendors lost their revenue and most of their like business because nobody would approach them during COVID-19. So we decided to take like the problem around us. And since all of us were studying business and we had like contacts, we kind of came together and we decided to bring the street vendors into our apartments and help uh, them reach out to some people who lived here. And a lot of people actually ended up buying their products and help them save their revenue. So it's really just daily problems you encounter and it just strikes you and you're like, oh wait, I can just do this. So you don't have to like Ananya said, try to cure cancer or anything. Just look at the problems right in front of you and you can make something big out of that. I did, and yeah, that's what I would suggest you guys to do as well.
And you did help them a lot with the digital as well, didn't you? I mean, they'd never
Yes.
even heard of. I really love that part of the story. So maybe if you could just speak a little before we give Ananya the mic on that.
Yeah, so well, obviously during COVID-19, we saw how people completely stopped using cash because of the COVID-19 norms and like distance and stuff. So we decided to help the street vendors establish like UPI, Google Pay, and credit card services. So it would be much easier for these guys to pay them as well. So we tried our best to incorporate anything possible. If it was like adding digitalized stuff, like we helped them get on Amazon and other apps as well, so they could market there. If you guys have heard of Swiggy, Genie and stuff, like they were also helping like pick up fruits and stuff from these vendors. So we taught them about these things because they already did exist. Obviously, the street vendors did not know about them. So we kind of helped them connect with social media and other forms of digital media. And that really helped ramp up their businesses. One personal vendor went from like a street vendor to opening like a little small shop. So you could
I
really see
remember that.
yeah, you could see how much depth it brought. Like it's a small step. All we had to do was like teach them and kind of just like help them out and tell them how to work through it.
Beautiful. Even now, when you speak about the story, I go back those crazy years when one of the worries was, will we really manage an impact? And I must say, you did. Ananya, I know about your projects, and you know I'm incredibly involved in one of them. So I really want you to be able to talk about what you thought were depth.
Right. So I think for me, like I already spoke about the time when like I was trying to find project problems around me and address my projects to those. So the problem that like I thought was something that really needed to be addressed, and it kind of just came to me was when my household have wanted some kind of academic guidance for her son because she thought her son was academically bright, but because she didn't have access to the kind of resources that we do, she was finding it really difficult to figure out what career path to nudge him towards, or like he seemed really confused too. So I decided to figure out how I can provide some kind of career guidance for underprivileged children, and that initially seemed like a really good idea, but the issue with having a project that's addressed for the underprivileged children is at the end of the day, we come from so much privilege, we can't understand the problems they go through. Like it is just not like you're not gonna be bang on about exactly what they need and exactly what kind of help they need. So initially we started off with a sort of like 3-step process. We were like, oh, this is perfect, it addresses every aspect we would ever want, and we were kind of thinking of it from like our perspective, what would we want? But I had to like commit a lot of time to the project to realize that if I don't do a beta launch, if I don't talk to actual students who will be using this project of mine, I will not be able to get a good sense of what aspects are actually useful, what aspects we need to improve upon, and which aspects we can add. So I did a beta launch with a small group of students through one of the schools and tied up with a foundation, and we spoke to the teacher at that school, and the teacher was able to give us a lot of feedback. She asked us to add aptitude tests and aspects like that, which improved the quality of our resource and made the resource a lot more helpful for the students. And we went back and forth with the teacher multiple times and try to improve our website as much as possible until the teacher was like, this is something that is really helpful, and was willing to launch it to the rest of the schools. And then my project was able to impact a bigger audience and thankfully have an actual impact.
Absolutely. And if you realize, children, one thing that I want you to know from both Sanya and Ananya is the failures. It wasn't a walk in the park for neither, right? I mean, during the pandemic, how do you go meet street vendors? No one wants you to step out. To be able to, Ananya faced a huge challenge about language because, to be able to make the videos in English, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, to be able to make it in other languages, she struggled to get the translators and be able to do it. So they faced a lot of obstacles, but the key element here was, did they use it to fail and give up, or did they use it to try and do something better? And that in true aspect is what an admissions officer is looking for. No one's looking for Nobel laureates. Y'all are 16 and 17. They are looking for people who have the intellectual vitality to see a problem and be able to try and work towards it. Okay, never forget this word, intellectual vitality. And with that, of course, we come to the very key question here, Sanya, Ananya. And Ananya, I probably want you to start with this. Alignment, right? I always speak of aligned activities. How important do you think that was for you? Because you also spoke about how you had the tangible side of computers, but you also had a wholly intangible side to you. So do you want to talk a little about alignment and its importance? And then, we're hoping Sanya has her version on that too.
Right. So for aligning my activities, since I was very sure I wanted to be a computer science major, I realized that it makes the most sense if I look at a problem and I try to use my computer science skills to do it, because at the end of the day, since I want to be a CS major, that is where my skills lie, that is where my interest lies. And that was able to allow me to align the activities, the problems I was looking at. So the project that I just spoke about is typically what would be classified as community service project, but I did involve a lot of aspects of coding. We made it a digital resource. There was video editing involved. The aptitude test that the teacher suggested we add, that was an algorithm, which is another aspect of CS. And as I was adding all of these different aspects to the project, not only was I showing that I had like the intellectual vitality, like Priyanka ma'am said, to solve the problem, but I had the intellectual vitality to use the skill that I want to develop in college to solve the problem. And that allowed me to align my activities with my interest. And then alongside that, I also had a lot of interest in art. But the thing with art is, art is really vague, right? You can like make art about anything. So some of the artworks that I would make would stem from my like STEM interest. My love for math, for example, was the basis of one of my artworks. And I had a lot of 3D modeling in my artworks, and that kind of spatial sense is another technical skill. So even though I was showing my creative side through my artworks, I still allowed my artworks to show that my primary interest is computer science. That is where my focus is. But art has taught me skills that complement my computer science skills, like creativity, and that I wanted to come to the college that I was applying to use these skills together to the best of my abilities.
Sanya, exactly, I think what she managed to do is even in the non-aligned, align it. And it's very similar for you, I know, with songwriting as well, Sanya, but we really want to hear your spiel on this.
Yeah, so as for me, I was super passionate about business from the start, but I kind of didn't just want to constrain myself to that. I have a lot of interests and I do not want to hold back. And that's kind of where my major shift also came in. So I decided to nurture all of them. I divided my extracurriculars into three parts, which was strictly academic based. Second was like volunteer organizational based, and third was just like full of personal interest. So with these three categories, I was really able to like nurture each part of my application. And then when it all came together, I think it showed like a well-rounded version of everything I'm passionate about and everything I've worked on over the past years. So in terms of academic base, I started working on a small business as well. Um, I wrote about how I like foreign languages. It could really be anything. I just decided to show all my academic talents. And with the organization part, I tried to kind of show social causes I aligned with and social causes I was like kind of passionate about. So like I had brought in the street vendor project and something about feminism. There was also this COVID-19 crowdfunding campaign to, show support. And with personal interest, I wrote about, songwriting is a big one, about traveling and learning languages, fashion, writing, and photography. So, by dividing them into three categories, I was kind of able to get all my interests because I did not want to give up on any of them and nurture all of them equally. So,
And that's very beautiful because very often you will hear have only a few activities, have only those which are aligned. And I know Accept You as a team also, we're constantly asking you what's aligned. Tell us what's aligned. And that's true. But there's always those cases. And I know for Sanya, it was almost a worry. Like I remember telling Sanya, narrow it down. Or, in some ways connect everything. And it did. Even her songwriting eventually connected to business, her small business, her feminist values, everything eventually connected to her showing leadership, entrepreneurship. So if you notice, you could be all over the mind map, but you have to have a central nucleus character. And that's really, really critical. And, again, we're still speaking about the activities, but let's not, I think children get very nervous about academics. And I'm sure 80% of them would be thinking, both must have been academic achievers here. So, I really want to know a little bit of your story, starting from grade 9 on your, and Sanya, especially your movement in academics was really important. So, and even for you, Ananya, you went through a personal upheaval that no child should ever have to go through. So we have to really understand how that impacted both of you as well. So Sanya, starting with you, your story of academics.
yeah, so academics was like never really my strong suit, not something I was particularly interested in at all in ninth and 10th. I hated math. That's like one subject I could never bear. So I kind of didn't bother focusing on school until 11th grade. I ended up choosing IBDP, and then it got super serious because it's a super rigorous course. And there was like a transition where it switched from CBSE to IB. And I think that kind of, and with COVID coming in and everything just happening all at once, kind of enlightened a personal transformation where I really wanted to be passionate about what I was studying. And with IB, I had the choice to kind of pick the subjects I wanted to and finally be able to kind of have a real life approach to learning, which helped me really navigate my interests and talents and kind of align that. Once I finally learned, like, okay, this is the issue. This is why I don't like math. And when I say I don't like math, I meant I was really bad at math. I remember Priyanka ma'am having a serious conversation with me where she's like, Sanya, you need to get your math grades up. So I had to figure out a way to kind of find out what is my issue, because why am I bad at math? Because I would like simply just give up. And it took me some reflection and personal time to review that. I was just scared of math because I just never felt like I was good enough at it. And math can be a pretty tough subject, right? And I think I just gave up and I had to kind of go back and learn to kind of enjoy the subject. So luckily with IB, we had a little project we could do, which is the internal assessment. And during the internal assessment, I actually found a topic which I really like. So I managed to turn hair color into an equation somehow. And that kind of just sparked my desire, like, wait, math can be fun. And I think I started to slowly learn how to love learning instead of just chasing behind grades and academic validation. Because I personally don't think that's very healthy. I would always chase after academic validation, and once I didn't get it, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I can't do this, whatever. But I would advise you, if you're like bad at some subject, take a moment back, take a step back, maybe try and find something that interests you and connect that to a subject, because it's really all about perspective. And all these personal changes in my life that I also had to go through kind of drove me to become better in school. And when I learned to love what I was studying, it became so much easier to kind of enjoy learning. And that's when I'm like, okay, wait, I can do math. And guess what? I finally like achieved to get a 7 in math and IB. So it really worked out well for somebody who couldn't do it. And yeah, so it's really about perspective and having the right mindset to do things.
And I have to say, Sanya, if you remember when we first spoke, one of the first things I told you was you are blocking yourself from math. Tell yourself
Yeah.
every day you love math. And I know I have done this, and I shared this story that I gave up math simply because I was shoved in a class with 12 different boys, and if I was even 10 seconds slower, I was made fun of, and I was so conscious I just gave it up. So I make sure that no other children has to do it. And I always say that yoga and math are exactly the same. The more you practice, the better you'll become. No one's We're all born to do yoga, but we don't, and our body stiffens up eventually. It's the same. We're all born to do math.
Yeah.
And Sanya, you're exactly the yin of the yang, which is going to be Ananya. She's completely into academics, completely bowled over by math. So
Yeah.
that's why children have had them together, because I want you all to take that perspective. Don't freak out and think only the academic winners are the winners. It's not true. All right. That's the whole purpose of this. And you can become an academic winner. Sanya chose to become an academic winner, not through grades, but as a learner. And eventually her grades became fantastic. But Ananya, your story to tell.
So my story is pretty different from Sania's. I was someone who was interested in academics from the beginning. I was definitely not like ranked number one in my class or anything like that, but I did enjoy the subjects that I did enjoy. I did enjoy them thoroughly. I would spend time doing them. Um, Academically, in ninth and 10th, I was in a different school from the one I graduated in. And the issue with that I faced in that school was, since I was a girl in STEM, I didn't have a lot of females in my classes. So my IGCSE computer science class, I was the only female student. And that was something that was pointed out pretty often, and it definitely made me very conscious. And it's very similar to the story Priyanka ma'am told of like when she was a child. So that was something that it was very disheartening. But the fact that I made it through those 2 years of IGCSE computer science as the only female in the class did solidify my resolve to study computer science. And that was something I was able to speak about in my application, because it's not just about getting that A star or whatever. It's about the challenges you face to get that A star and how you approach those challenges. So when I spoke about that, I think that was something that was unique in my academic journey. And the like personal upheaval that Priyanka ma'am spoke about in my life came around 11th grade. That was just a family tragedy that I had to deal with, and it was something that was very difficult to deal with, and it did impact me academically. And I think more than my academics, in fact, impacted my SAT score, and I had to take the SAT again because I took the SAT right after the incident. And you need to remember that when you're applying to the US, especially, they understand that you're not your application, that you are a person. So if you just very honestly go like, I had a rough couple of months, XYZ happened to me, and I found it very difficult to cope with. I was not able to study, like I literally just couldn't study. If you say something as honest as that, they're going to appreciate the honesty, and they're going to be understanding of the fact that you had a human reaction to a human life. They want you to be human, and they want you to be able to communicate that with them. So as long as So even if you struggle with a class where, initially you just start off and you're just like, this is not for me, and your grades are really bad, and then you pick them up eventually, and you tell the college that like the reason I started off was, oh, because like I was the only girl in the class, and that was really demotivating for me. They will understand that. They will understand that you grew from the incident, and they'll understand that you're human at the end of the day.
I'm so glad you brought that up. It's so true. So children, here's what I think both of them are telling you. It's okay. You will go through your mountains and valleys. We don't want you to, but it might happen, and that's fine. It's not the end of the world. Okay. With that, let's actually move to the application now. We have something for my younger children called the Common Application Essay. It's a terror on its own. It's a 650 word of personal story. And some children spend 6 months on it. Some children spend 6 days on it. And there are unfortunately children who think they can do it in 6 minutes or 60 minutes, and it's a disaster. I really want both of you, Sanya and Ananya, to talk about what your essay was as honestly as you children want to, but it'll really help our kids, and talk about your journey into the to the Common App essay. You can, of course, talk about how AcceptU worked with you, what was your learnings, introspections, and how did you finally come to the masterpiece. Let's start with you, Ananya, here.
Yeah, so my Common App essay was, it started off by talking about the personal tragedy that I had, but I didn't focus a lot on that tragedy itself, because I realized that that tragedy made me realize that a recurring theme throughout my application was my passion for assistance, and that's something Priyanka ma'am spoke about before, about how you can have very different interests, how you can have aligned and non-aligned activities, but you have to have a nucleus. And in my Common App essay, I tried to identify that nucleus and focus on that. So for me it was assistance in different forms of my life: academic, non-academic, related to my applications, like extremely random personal anecdotes. And I was able to speak about some of my projects through that. And I realized that I wanted to help people, so I linked my projects and these personal anecdotes together under the theme of assistance, and I was able to cover what I thought was my personality pretty holistically.
Sanya, yours was an interesting one.
Yeah, so my Common App essay kind of revolved around my academics a little bit, because there was a huge shift in my academics from prior to 11th grade until after the 11th grade. So I kind of had to explain my grades, and I thought this would kind of be the perfect chance to. Along with my grades, there was a huge shift in my achievement, my performance overall. And I thought the Common App essay would be, again, like Ananya mentioned, the nucleus to kind of explain everything. So I started off by explaining like the transition in my grades and everything, but my whole essay kind of revolved around perspective, where I talk about my personal self-improvement, and I bring in the perspective of how you kind of don't have to hold yourself back with the grades you used to have. And like how Priyanka ma'am talked about the math example, I brought that in as well. I talked about how perspective helped me kind of change and improve from being somebody who was just not that academically smart and not involved in activities to somebody who threw themselves into everything they were interested in, and it even helped my grades. So I talk about how, the change in my perspective and mindset drove me to become better in school and become a better person, and learn to like love what I was studying. And I talk a lot about looking at failure as a chance to improve. So I kind of brought in personal anecdotes about the math example, for example. And I talked about the power of kind of perspective, and how having the right mindset can really set you in the right direction. And I brought that into my essay and explained how that kind of affected my journey as a student as well.
So before we move on, children, parents, you all can very much put your questions on the chat. You all can very much provide us. If you fill the registration form and we have your details, awesome. Just put it on the chat that we'd like to be considered for a free consult with either our admissions team or with me, or for profile building, or with Sanya and Ananya. We do have a question here where I think, Ananya, that's to you, but it probably needs you to reveal a little about what you had to go through. So do you want to address that question?
Yeah, so I think when I was talking about assistance, I was just sort of talking about um assistance in general. So I was obviously like my theme was finding problems around me and solving them. So depending on the problem I was solving, supposing with my project about the career guidance thing, I was providing assistance to my domestic help's son, and that was sort of how assistance came out in that. And in terms of the family tragedy that happened, it was about providing assistance to my family, trying to ease the tragedy in the best manner possible for myself and for those around me, and sort of just be of as much help as I possibly could be. Um, I don't know if you would like more clarification, feel free to message me. Oh, great, thank you.
We do have another question here, that is the extracurricular activity a part of the Common App? Do you children want to address what you all think, and then I can jump in?
Sure. So, for me, I would say my extracurricular activities were definitely a reflection of my personality and a reflection of who I was. So, I included my extracurricular activities in my Common App essay because I thought they were a good way to showcase who I am as a person and who I would be at the university. And secondly, one thing you need to realize that for a lot of colleges, you're probably only going to get a maximum of 300 more words beyond the Common App essay to tell them about your application. So if you reserve your Common App essay of 650 words to talk about something completely personal, you're probably going to have to rush the details of your extracurricular activities for some of the colleges. And so I thought this was a good way to ensure that that doesn't happen. And I anyways thought that since my projects were very close to my heart, they were a good reflection of who I was as a person. So I didn't mind bringing them into a essay that's supposed to be about who you are.
Sanya?
Yeah, I agree. So your Common App essay doesn't have to be about extracurriculars, but it's a great way to kind of showcase yourself as well. Because after your extracurriculars is where you spend a lot of time building them, and if you go into depth with them, so it could be a crucial part. And I know a lot of my friends had extracurriculars which will build on like events personal to them, or maybe something they were really passionate about. So Common App essays, you're free to kind of talk about anything you want. So I would personally say choose the story that represents your true self to the colleges the way you want it to, and just choose something that you really want all the colleges to know. And if there's something, like for me personally, I really had to make sure the a huge shift in grades and like the huge shift in everything was explained. And for me, the perfect opportunity to do that was the Common App essay. So don't think that it has to be about extracurriculars. Make sure your Common App essay is about something that again ties everything together. Or if there's something that you really need to explain or feel like the colleges should hear, I think you should go ahead and put that in your Common App essay.
So I'm going to jump in here and take a little bit of time to try and explain to you a Common App essay. So a Common Application essay is essentially an introspection of a very tiny part of your life, which probably eventually becomes a very big aspect of who you are, your identity, your personality, your failures, your learnings, your outcomes. So if you're looking to talk about your activities, it shouldn't be about, oh, I became the project leader, I was the co-founder, I got 40 different people to work with it. That can be put even in your activities section. What you need to address here is, why did you start it? How did you learn that this is required? What were the struggles you went through? How did you manage to bring depth? Eventually, what was your learning out of it? How would you like to continue this in college? Or how has that shaped you to probably choose the major you want to do or choose the person you want to become? Same with academics. If the academics is, oh, I'm a topper, I am the star of computer science. Remember, this is a lot that will be covered by your transcripts, your report cards, your letters of recommendation from your teacher. But if there is a special aspect of your academics which defines who you are, like in the case of Sanya, crazy move of curriculum, crazy time of movement, choosing a subject which is the foundation of the major she wants to do. that is a very relevant aspect of a story. Similarly with Ananya, she nearly could have lost a family member, and almost in a lot of ways probably did. And that's what was her, what she started with. And then to be able to see that in a positive way. Now that is what makes for a human being to become a different person entirely. And that's what she chose to talk about. It's very easy to give a sob story. The truth is that these admissions officers are reading over 75,000 essays. Do you really think they have a space for a sob story? But if you have a sob story which has another aspect of it, choose to go with it. Okay, and someone asked me, do you have to talk about academics or something really large as a part of your life? No, we've had children talk about their love for juggling. We've had children talk about one conversation with a grandfather. We've had children talk about one aspect of cooking that they learned in pandemic. We've had children talk about swimming, when they're underwater, what are the aspects they felt and why? So they're just different, very, very versatile essays. There's some very strong, very powerful essays as well. But more or less, by God's grace, a lot of our children in India don't have to go something very dramatic. So you don't have to go dramatic. Anything could be you, anything could be uniquely you. Choose to use that to highlight yourself. So I know I've spoken a lot about this here, but again, we have some very interesting questions. Do you have any advice on writing rich academic essays? Okay, so I do think that when we speak about academic essays, I don't know if you're talking about academics and IB or research, or are you talking about the common application or the supplemental essays? Either ways, don't over focus on the fluency of the English. Focus on the fluency of thoughts. Focus on the fluency of the heart. Don't try and make it very fancy in English, because the readers are going to be people like me, you, everybody. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Ananya, Sanya, but I am not a big fan of trying to read very poetic or very fancy English unless you're applying for an English program.
Yeah, I agree. And I just want to add something to your answer to Devansh's question, where for how I would recommend going about the Common App essay is seeing how you define yourself. So for a few people, the answer to that could be some personality traits. For a few people, it could be the answer to that could be some passions that they have, or for some people, it could just be like the diversity in their passions. And if it's something like personality traits, you're obviously not going to be like, I am in dedicated and hardworking. You're not going to list your personality traits out. So then you would probably talk about anecdotes or extracurricular activities which help you show those personality traits. If it's your passions, you talk about those things you've done with your passion. So it's just sort of about asking yourself, how do you define yourself, and what is the best and most interesting way you can convince the admissions officer that what you claim to be is actually who you are. So giving anecdotes is a very good way of going about that.
Be specific, not generic. Great. With this, I do come to my favorite question. You chose to use an external counselor and you chose to use AcceptU, and I can't be thankful enough for that, to have such wonderful girls in my life because of that. But what do you, in retrospect, feel that the value really comes from? Where did AcceptU help you? Sanya, do you want to address that first?
Yeah, I would say pretty much in every aspect. Like I said, towards the beginning of this, I was kind of a little bit lost. To be honest, I was sort of confused and unsure about what major I would like to pick. I was unsure about how to go about IB because it was all new to me. Studying CBSE, I was not used to all these new project and all this really heavy workload, and time management also became super hard. I always love writing, like you guys here, passionate about songwriting, but I didn't really have the best experience in writing a lot of essays and having to address my points concisely and coherently in essays, and about all these different things that came with college applications, with schools to apply to, and they're all such confusing questions. So I think my AcceptU counselor really helped me first of all, kind of slow down and understand myself first, understand my interests. And then she went ahead and kind of encouraged me to find out what I'm interested about and what are some things that are like really crucial that I could maybe put on paper and align them with my application, and that would look good on potential universities. I came in with the mindset that I kind of already had some universities I wanted to go to, and my counselors also helped me understand what the application process is about and how to really go about it. And I think what they help me mostly is with essays and my extracurriculars. They help me navigate how to put them on paper and, sometimes give me ideas about how it would be better for me to take a certain direction and so many things. Your counselors are like literally kind of like a therapist in terms of colleges.
Oh.
They help you out with every single aspect. If you have any doubt, just reach out to them and they'll help you.
Oh, that's so sweet of you. Thank you, Sanya. Ananya.
So I think for me, the main like benefit was in terms of the resourcefulness, in terms of brainstorming. So like Priyanka ma'am mentioned, I had like a lot of ideas through the course of my like high school, and I would always like call up Priyanka ma'am and be like, I think that this is like a really cool thing I could do. Like this, it's really practical, and like I can solve this problem in this way. I can do this. We can like add this in the future, and I would just like offload my ideas on her, and she would help me evaluate whether I have the time I would need to commit to this, B, whether it's something that would genuinely be impactful, whether it would align with my activities, help me basically evaluate and be smart about what I want to focus my time in. And then also a lot of resources in terms of taking your projects forward. So for the career guidance project that I mentioned, Priyanka ma'am really helped in getting me connected to a school and a foundation that was willing to partner with a high school student and explore the project that a high school student had made, and was willing to go back and forth with me, which is really difficult to find in a large foundation and a large organization. And that kind of eliminated any hurdles that I was facing. I had the language barriers where I had to figure out how to get all the videos dubbed and translate all the content, and that was slowing down the process a lot for me. So Priyanka ma'am really helped in figuring out what the quickest, easiest solution is for things like that. And in terms of essays, there were a lot of small things that like I didn't realize were important, and my counselor Alyssa really helped me. So, for example, when I'll be talking about professors that I really admire or who I would want to work with, something I wouldn't realize was I would just like use their full name. And Alyssa made me realize that I have to refer to them as professor last name. And then if they have a PhD, I need to replace the professor with a doctor, which is something extremely small, but it goes a long way in terms of showing respect and these little things that you don't realize are important because you're just so like bogged down on like trying to get all the details of your projects in and trying to get like as much content covered in those essays. These kind of small things go a long way, and your essays just seem that's just like the icing on the cake.
Now everyone will understand why this is my favorite question, I feel, on Paradise. But what is more important is I'm so glad to see the questions we have here. So Sanya, Ananya, I think let's just address the questions. It's so good when children ask questions. As SAT is difficult to crack. Ananya, you want to go with that one?
So I think SAT is a test that just tests your English and math skills, and those are the two most fundamental skills that you have as a student. So I think as it's designed, it is not a difficult test, but as it's an aptitude test, it is something where you can start off at a pretty high score and not need to work very hard. But it's not difficult to improve with regular practice because there are patterns, there are like repeated questions, there are concepts that come pretty often. So it's definitely overwhelming in the beginning, but as long as you're reviewing your mistakes and you're understanding the mistakes you made, and you're putting that extra time and not just doing the practice paper but understanding why you're not doing well on the practice paper, you'll be okay. Like I did about like 50 papers myself, but I'm pretty sure I could have gotten away with just doing 20 if from the beginning I reviewed my mistakes. Up till like 30 I was just doing the papers without looking at my mistakes, and that was very pointless because I was stagnating.
Sanya, did you need to add anything to that?
Yeah, I agree with Ananya. Although I did go SAT optional, I did give it once, and I would say that I would have probably done much, much better if I actually took the time to review where I went wrong. I think that's super important. So once I found that out, I like took each practice paper I did, and I would have like a separate notebook, and I would make sure I solved that question again and like make sure I knew why I went wrong. And like next time you encounter like a similar question like that, you know where you went wrong, so you're not going to go wrong again. And that actually helped me increase my score by like a few hundreds too. So,
Totally. I have a huge level of tips and tricks that I try and teach my children for SAT. So I think I have an article on LinkedIn. You guys can look it up, but otherwise we can do a call. I'm going to jump into this question. What age, according to you, is right to start with college counseling? Um, what happens is from grade 9 onwards, colleges want to know exactly what you've done. So typically grade 9 is non-optional. Everything that you're going to do is going to go to colleges. So I almost feel that if you're in grade 8 and you've kind of started understanding what's your ikigai, what do you enjoy, why do you enjoy, it's a good time. You have a little access to free time. It's great. Grade 9 is also a wonderful time to start with it. You don't have to beat yourself and say, oh my God, grade 9's over, I'm late. Doesn't matter. It's fine whenever you start. But I do want to say grade 12 is late. So do be a little mindful and conscious and start a little earlier than that. Any advice for art portfolio design challenge? Sanya, you want to talk about this because you've actually
yeah.
moved.
Yes. So as for the art portfolio and design challenge, it depends on the specific university. For example, Parsons, they gave us a question and they clearly stated what they wanted out of the art portfolio or design challenge you'd send. So I had to do the Parsons portfolio challenge thing. And in that, they basically asked me to represent my thought process of creativity through a portfolio. So I had to submit a drawing and I had to write like a 500-word essay, kind of showing my thought process. And what I did was I picked something super simple. It was just this image of an eye when one of the eye was shut and one was open. And I kind of thought about something personal to me. It always has to be personal. The best art is, or like anything creative, the best works always come from something personal. So I took something personal that I had been struggling with, and I decided to kind of relate it to the drawing I made. And then I showed my thought process behind that drawing, like what that drawing kind of meant to me. And I think that paired it perfectly. So I kind of talked about duality of things, where I talked about how I was afraid to open up. And if I did, it would be like a whole different version of me. So I kind of laid out two different versions of me that would be present through one eye being open and one eye being closed, representing like either versions of me. So it's something like your thought process. Just be true to yourself, and anything personal you have, I would definitely say put that, because colleges love seeing that. The best art or anything creative genuinely does come from something that's personal to you. So.
Sanya, beautifully answered. Thank you. We are really seriously, when did we run out of time? I don't know. I'm just going to take one question, which I actually phenomenally love. And Ananya and Sanya, you'll probably both be reading that. It's from Anishi. It's so well explained. And I'm so glad you did that, Anishi. It doesn't have to be about serving the less privileged. It is exactly what I was coming from. It's called intellectual vitality. You have the privilege to learn something. It is what you want to teach. It's what you want to use later in your life. Show it to us. That's what colleges ask. Who you are and who do you want to be? Is there a straight line between the two? If you say you are someone who wants to study computer science, you want to become an app developer, show it to me. So obviously, when you need to show something, you have to show how you benefited someone through it. So in both their cases, they benefited a community outside, but that community came from inside. They saw the problem inside out when they're walking to school, when they're walking to a mall. In the case of Ananya, in her house, So it does seem as though and a lot of counselors say, oh, you have to do non-profit work. Not true. What you have to do is you have to see if you are benefiting someone. It could be your grandfather, it could be your grandmother, it could be your mother, it could be the broken back you have, it could be the fractured hand you have. But did you see a problem? Did you reach a solution? Intellectual vitality. Okay, guys, please understand this. And Anishi, I really hope that if you are, please reach out to us, send us your details. We'll try and give you a personal consult here as well, because you need to understand this difference. Don't let anyone convince you you've got to do community service, you've got to do sports, you've got to work with the blind, you've got to serve the Red Cross Society. Nothing. If you're not passionate about it, don't do it. But do where you're passionate about. Show it. Okay, obviously with that, I will come to an end. One thing I will ask you, Ananya, in one line, if you have to tell my 12th graders, what do they need to focus on in their application? What will it be? Sanya, think about it. You're next.
I would say just sort of trying to be a different individual. Don't go down the route of being a clone. Don't do robotics because everyone's doing robotics. Don't like, there's no point copying everyone, because like, look at it from an admissions officer's perspective, they're just going to be reading like 7 kids doing robotics, they're going to get bored, they're not going to look at you, and B, you're probably not going to enjoy it. So there's really no point.
Sanya.
Yeah, as for me, as you've heard, I can't stick to one thing, so I have two things. I would say, first of all, please, please, please keep your options open. I was always, like, from the start, passionate about business, but like I said, I had some other things that I was interested in, and it took me until I got my admission offer from Parsons to realize that solely business is not what I wanted to do. I found a degree that combines business and design together, and it's literally the perfect degree for me. So always keep your options open. You never know. Down the line, you might find out that you wanted to do something else. Second thing, I would say that just make sure your application is true to who you are. A lot of us go in this fire trying to become somebody the universities would like us to be. And if you're not being true to yourself, you're just not going to thrive where you are. So yeah, just be true to yourself, and the universities you do get into will be the perfect fit for you.
Awesome. So with that, please remember, children, we have monthly webinars. We're going to have one on how to write your Y essays. Obviously, more for grade 12 students, will be run by a Northwestern and a Dartmouth kid. We're going to have another one on UK SOPs. And, I'm just overexcited about these webinars because so many of you all come back to tell me it was life-changing and it really helped you all understand. If you all felt that about it today as well, something that you all have learned, something you all have gained, send us your thank you messages. That's how we can do what we do. And remember, there is a mobile number that goes directly to Ninad. Ninad is awesome, loves children, always make sure that you have access to us. I know Ananya was more concerned to answer a lot more questions. Send us your questions on email or WhatsApp, and we'll try and get them to be answered. With that, I promise Sanya and Ananya just 1 hour of this, and we've crossed it. So thank you so much, both of you. I'm hoping to see you all before you all both disappear to college. But in the meantime, can't thank you all enough. I know you both have to leave for college, but here is what it means to actually help someone else, and it's not community service. So thank you. Good night, everyone. Be in touch with us. Send us your thank yous, send us your messages, send us your opinions, send us what you're looking for, and we'll try and work it out. With that, bye-bye, and all the best for the weekend. Take care.